It's pretty obvious we have all seen a lion or a tiger up close on a trip to the zoo in the summer, or marine animals in a tank in an aquarium on a field trip. Everyone from my audience analysis said they have been to a zoo or an aquarium and made good memories there. But have you ever thought to yourself what happens to these animals after you leave the zoo, or when the zoo closes for the night, or the summertime? They don't get to go back to their homes in the wild where they were born and raised to evolve. They're stuck in captivity. This is affecting animals all over the nation and the world, locally and places that we know, but it's mostly affecting orca killer whales. It's beginning to take a toll on their well-being, as long as their life and the lives of the trainers they are with every day. According to an article in Huffington Post, there are new laws stating that trainers and whales have to be separated by a physical barrier. This isn't where it stops, though. These animals are exploited and humiliated almost every day to perform for humans and listen to them on the basis that they get food afterwards. A bill in California is on the floor and ready to vote for next year that would ban the import and export and breeding, as well as all performing shows. Also, according to my audience analysis, many people did not know the knowledge of captive animals, only animals in the wild. Orca whales should not be held in captivity because they are dying at younger ages, being ripped away from their families, and they have much more complex minds than humans ourselves would like to think. Hoping today that the facts that I have learned and expressing now will persuade my audience, as you guys today, to maybe not spend as much time or money at these parks and even sign petitions out there where everything gets started. According to Howard Gerbert, CEO of OrcaNetwork.org, whales have very similar lifespans to humans. Females living around the age of 100 and males living to about 55 or 60. But in captivity, this all changes. Whales in captivity are only living to the ages about 35. There are many reasons for this: high stress from the performing of every day, and they are being put in these cramped sea pens because SeaWorld does not have enough room to hold animals this size. Whales are very similar to humans also in that they have different cultures, and when you capture whales, whales are being brought in from every different part of the earth. So whales from Southeast Asia are being mixed with the coast of Washington, and they're not getting along because they don't understand each other. This escalates very quickly to biting and even killing each other. Even though whales are pretty different from culture to culture, they have similarities, as well as they don't separate from each other very often. Their young always stays with the mother, and the communities are very tightly knit. This is why being ripped away from their families is affecting them. In 1973, whale hunting became very popular on the coast of Washington state, and it's cheapest to ship the smallest. So babies are being ripped away from their mothers at who knows how old they were, because the fishermen and the research scientists didn't really pay attention to things like that. Now it hasn't stopped. Now the young babies that are born in captivity are disrupting shows because they're not being raised how they're meant to be raised. According to Blackfish, the documentary by CNN and the research scientists there, mothers, when they lose their babies at SeaWorld because they are disruptive, they go through a very similar grieving process as humans, and they want to be alone for a long time, and they do unheard of long distance calls trying to find their baby. And the reason behind the similar grieving process is that human brains are very similar to whale brains. There are two main differences. The size, obviously, is the big one, and then also the limbic system, which is where emotions and behaviors are controlled, has an extension. And Lori Marino, who is a neuroscientist that works studying whales almost all the time, she has concluded that this would only mean that whales are very highly emotional. They have a very high sense of self and others, and they need very similar stimulation and interaction as humans. But in captivity, this is not happening. Only about 1/3 of a whale's life is made being stimulated. 2/3 of their life is spent in a 20 by 30 foot sea pen, and they are almost always alone because, like I said before, the whales in different cultures are not meant to be put in together. And I made a scaled down version of it to kind of compare. This pen this box, would be compared to a 20 by 30 sea pen, and this stuffed animal in here is scaled down to the size of the biggest orca whale at SeaWorld. He is a 6-ton, 12,000 pound whale who is kept in a sea pen for about 2/3 of his life, more than that in the winter time when the shows aren't as popular. and he has to spend it in solitude because he doesn't get along with many other whales. And at night, and sometimes even during the day, this lid being on top of the beetle is almost similar to a gate shutting on him, and he spends almost two-thirds of his life in here. And it's just not healthy for them. It's very comparable to humans being stuck in a dark, cold room with no interaction. And researchers believe that this helps develop a psychosis, leading to them lashing out. According to Death at SeaWorld, written by David Kirby, 70+ trainer whale accidents have happened, and 4 deaths of trainers by the male breeding whale Tilikum. This is not to bash at SeaWorld. They do have very helpful research, and the expression "kill one to save 100" comes to mind. They study whales that become beached or whales that die of infection, and they have very smart research scientists there that can do that, but that doesn't include the exploitation and performancing of whales. And in my audience analysis, people told me that the trips to the zoo and the aquarium were very informational to them, but there are other means of learning these same exact things. Touring in the wild, museums, and very elaborate research has been done. With this, orca whales are much more than we know, and keeping them in captivity is causing problems such as dying young, separated from families and cultures, and they are a lot smarter than we think. Spending a lot less money and time supporting these animal captivities and looking into petitions is something that can be done, and it's only the beginning. And it doesn't have to be SeaWorld in particular. It can be a local zoo, a state zoo, anything you can think of that would maybe have the exploitation of animals. And with this information, I hope to have at least brought your attention to the ways you can change your thoughts on captive animals and why.